All right, welcome everybody. This is Doug with the LincolnList.com. This is the weekly stock market review for the 27th of July, the last week of the month. It is crunch time. It's time for you to hit those goals, to be the trader that you want to be. If you're struggling and you're facing this last week and you're not really where you want to be as a trader, visit the LincolnList.com. Take a 14-day free trial, see if our educational format can deliver the results to help you get to that elite level as a trader. We'll begin with the SPY, and as I've been talking maybe over the last couple of weeks, it's almost worthless to just sit here and think about the SPY impacting any of your decisions because we've been stuck in this tight range. And if anybody's out there trying to tell you they know exactly what this market's going to do, they're full of it, man. They don't. I mean, you're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff. We're seeing the market go back and forth in this tight range, but we're still seeing some great internals and some great sectors with some great moves, which is really important for a stock trader. But just to kind of look at this thing, last week, we could go back to the last 3 weeks of trading, which has been an incredible month of July. You were bordering this 204 down here at the bottom when it looked like a very important support level might get breached. We had China crisis, we had the Greece crisis, but all this other stuff over top of the market looks like we were going to break down and maybe get that so-called correction everybody was looking for. The following week, which was last week, or the week before, excuse me, we get this whole nice little melt up, goes all the way back up towards the top of the range. When business closed towards the end of the week, it looked like, hey, new highs are coming the first part of the week. And here we go this week, and it was pretty much all selling, working its way back down to this 204 level. It's all you can probably hear me chuckling a little. It's almost comical because we're just still stuck in this tight range. And if you're using this to make decisions with trading, I have to step out and say you just can't do that now. I mean, you just got to look at the stocks because there are independent stocks that are trading, and they're bullish. And there's some that are bearish, and there's some great quality trading opportunities out there, regardless of whatever the hell this thing decides it wants to do. But just kind of looking at it, still the same thing applies for the 100th week in a row, is that, 213, above 213, maybe new highs. Until we get under 204, there's not going to be anything to even talk about a correction. Still, you go all the way back here, we're still at the same levels we were at Thanksgiving. No change. So a lot of drama in that time, right? A lot of predictions, a lot of drama, a lot of talk, a lot of fluff, but we're still in the same spot. And that's all that really matters. Now let's get to stocks because this is what I'm talking about. There are great opportunities. This was a good week for stocks. We saw some great things like TIEK. This has to be the leader of the week because I just mentioned not too long ago, it seemed like it had been a little while. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was PBMD was the last little, you had all that VLTC going, the PPMD. There's a couple I don't even know if I'm saying that right. But there was always the cheapy little single-digit stock going crazy with the ridiculous 500, 1,000% move. We hadn't really seen that in a couple of weeks. Here you get this with TIEK, and you got a really big move, followed up with a pretty decent move on Friday. Really, the big move was on Thursday. The interesting thing about this is when you had Gene, Digley, Lake, VLTC, PBMD, everybody was shorting that stuff. Remember? It's like day one, it's like this thing's a scam, and they just shorten it. And then their accounts get decimated. It was interesting to see across the social media board how many people changed their stance. I can see it from the short sellers, and I'm one of them, by the way, like notorious short sellers, changing the tune here a little bit, buying these stocks now. So you've seen a little different complexion here. You've seen a lot of those groups buy these stocks because nobody wants to get their account grenaded, right? So it's kind of interesting to see the shift in that balance. Now with this stock, I don't want to make any predictions. I mean, I've been around and around with these kind of plays, and for me, they're just not, once they get going like this, they really aren't worth shorting the first couple of days. Maybe you pull that move off. But the problem that you're going to have with it is if you don't, you might be out of, if you're not the disciplined trader, it's game over for you. Because this is what you can't do, is you can't get stuck in a stock that can squeeze on you 190 or 200%. You won't have an account. Regardless if you think that's justified or legit or it's a scam, a pump and dump, that is irrelevant to the fact that you will be broke, right? You can't do that. So when a stock moves as much as an TIEK or a VLTC, for example, I can pull up VLTC. You don't have to be the first one to the party here. You don't have to be the first short seller into the business here. I mean, people started shorting this thing at $3 saying it was overbought, but it didn't really stop till 20. Was it justified? No. Does it make sense? No. But that's the market. I mean, you just, as I keep saying all the time, You trade what you see, not what you believe. It doesn't matter what you think. You won't have an account. And this, I'm sure VLTC cost people their trading careers and their accounts. And it comes down later. And I'm sure iTech will have that moment when it will come down. But maybe that's not going to be for a few days. We're going to need to see some of this momentum come off of here. Now, there's always the chance. You saw some pretty good strength out of there. There's a couple of areas here on Friday that looked like it wanted to sell off a little bit. But as always, like it did the day before, it found a little bit of support and then snuck in a nice couple of squeezes there. So I wouldn't write off another squeeze or a push or a run towards 20 and maybe higher before we're ready for this. One way or the other, I'm not going to predict what it's going to do, but what I'm going to tell you, this is a great stock to have on the board. It's a little bit more readily available than some of the other short stocks have been. I mean, for barring shares, I should say. And it's going to offer a couple of great plays in both directions, no matter what your biases are. You just got to wait for the setup. Lots of volume. Story's not done here. It's going to be a great little stock to mess around with. Now, this kind of ignited some of the names we saw come back to the fold here a little bit. This CALA sitting down here was a former runner. You see it had its parabolic day, just like a VLTC. Not quite that dramatic, but it's the same kind of setup here. And sometimes they'll kick back up and they'll start running for a few days. Now this one has some moments. I'm up and down on this one because one of the things this is having obvious trouble with is holding. If you look back here on my daily chart, the last 3 days, there's always a breakout in the last 3 days, going Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But not a one of them really held up. Yes, the stock closed green, but you were at 1061 today, and you finished down at 884. That's a pretty deep retracement. And as you look at the daily chart, you open it up a little, you can see the wicks on top of this thing. A little bit of a struggle there. If you're really bullish, you're looking at charts, you're really bullish on a stock, wicks are something that when they're on the top of a chart that isn't really favorable. It's not a guarantee, of course. There's not a 100% guarantee in any analysis, but it's not really a good sign. You look back here when you get a really good wick, started some selling, or at least some short-term selling. There's obvious problems getting this stock. You can even go back further than that. This $9, even on this really bounce on the 17th of July, you've had 4 or 5 days of some pretty strong action in there, but yet to really close above 9. So got to get that a little bit. Might be sitting right here on that pivot spot. Let's just watch it. As I said, nobody can really predict what's going to happen. This thing might run. It might get upgraded again. Who knows what's going to happen? You got some earnings coming around the corner here. But if these little small ones want to take off, they can take off when they want to. You have to be prepared. So let's keep CALA up there. Let's keep iTech up there and see what happens. I also want to kind of take a look at AMBA. Now, we remember the Citron hit piece really got this stock drilled, which is kind of interesting because we've seen over the last year or so, the art is, there was a time when Muddy Waters and Citron would say something like it'd be kiss of death for a stock, but it's kind of been not that way. Here, in this case, it actually worked. I mean, this thing got smoked. And it spent the last couple, about a month or so here in a really tight range. Started breaking out. This was a pretty good breakout, and then it really just kind of uncorked itself. And you're up here. You can see where I got the line drawn. I got a feeling it's obvious from the chart this thing really wants that 130 spot. It's trying to make some new highs here. It's trying to go. It might need a few days rest because, it's already made the run from 103 to 127. So you're talking about a $27 gain in share price. And now you're asking to buy a stock up here and for it to move possibly $5 or $10 more after. Now, it certainly could happen. But I think if it was to go early, let's say that move happens early, it's probably going to be less of a sustainable move, if that makes sense, than if it would hold here maybe for 3 or 4 days, flag, build, perk, and then go. I think if that one, you would see, if we would wait 3 or 4 days for that move to happen and it would consolidate tightly up here, I would think that move, no guarantees of course, but I would think that move would be a lot more powerful and awesome for everybody because you might see a 140 or something ridiculous like that. But we're just going to have to let it play out again. It might actually end up being a short when it's all said and done, going against the 130 as a stop and letting this thing fade down to some of these moving averages because there is some good separation between short-term moving averages. And typically, that's a spot where once you start getting that separation, things start to get maybe a little frothy and they're due for a small pullback. But again, just like the rest of them, we'll see what AMBA has to offer. Now, we did see the market pull this week. I don't know if we're going to melt up next week or we're going to melt down or whatever, but what we did see a little bit here was for the first time, I think, in a little while, we saw a little crackage in the biotechs, especially the IBB. You know, it got kind of smoked out a little bit here on Friday with a huge sell-off. We all know the story, or if you have been trading, unless this is your first day of trading, you've been trading for the last week or two. We know that bios have been hot for a couple of years, really, really hot. You know, in the last 3 to 4 months, we've seen some incredible stocks make incredible moves, get some ridiculous secondary financing, and you know everything gets corrected. It doesn't matter what it is or how great the story is. It's just the way the market works. You know, that's just the way things go, and you got to play that game. And you got a nice pullback here. Could signal a little correction. And I think long term, if you're an investor in biotech, this is a great time to get a little bit of a correction. If you're a trader, it's even better. And I think when you look at it, one of the ones that's really on top of my, I mean, there's tons of these that we can go down, but one of the ones I'm looking at here is Rare. My good buddy Rare. This thing, you know, even with a little bit of pullback, yeah, give me a second to pull it up here. Even with a little bit of a pullback, this, you know, is still pretty strong. As I said, biotechs have been strong in general. So this is a $60 stock, you know, pretty much beelining right to 120, 130, making more than 100% gain here. You've got some consolidation up here in this little area. You can see it, you know, just like some of the other stocks we highlighted. You definitely have resistance up here at 135 and the inability to want to close above 135. Let's kind of use that as a guide. I think overall it's not the greatest. Like usually when you see a para, what you want is a thing that goes straight up like this, and then you want it to get wiped out, kind of like a little A-frame. You know, you got a little para, but then you're just clustering up there. Which, when you're looking at a short, I wouldn't classify that as perhaps a tier 1 kind of setup. Maybe something a little like this Eros or something that's a little bit more ramped up and para. But in this case, I think this stock, you know, just cutting to the BS here, this stock is due for at least a little bit of a pullback. I mean, like a buck or two, or a red day for a couple of bucks here in addition to what you have. Got some good support here at 125. I think if if we begin with lots of biotech selling, maybe some negative impacting news across the board, earnings, etc., on some other biotech players, and we might start to see this dig in. I think this one's one of the ones that really has yet to drop a little bit. You know, they did they did an offering at 120, if I'm correct there. So, you know, getting corrected back down into the 120 is not out of the question. The chart would still be bullish overall, and long term it would still be bullish. But we might be able to take advantage of that correction. Again, maybe not the greatest one I've ever seen in the world, but I'm still keeping my eye on it. It's been up here for a long time, so possibly we get a correction. So I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, it's hard to tell what's going to happen this week, and that's kind of the beauty about what we do as traders. It's like, you know, you come to the market with a plan, but then all these other variables come in, and sometimes being surprised. You know, we had some great trades on that ITech, and having something like that, you know, when you're sitting there and you're taking these trades, and all of a sudden it just kind of, it's almost like a gift. It's like the market gods just give you this gift of this stock. And it's strange that people argue with it. You know, it's like, wait, man, you got a stock that's going up 180, 200% or whatever. What are you complaining about? Unless you're short, of course. But, you know, it's just a gift. It's a money-making gift if you stay on the right side of it. And that's the beauty of what we do as traders. You just never know. I say it all the time. You just never know when that next trade is around the corner. So no matter where you're sitting right now, if you're in the dumps, you haven't been making money, or you're making a lot of money, you just never know when that next trade's going to come by and present itself and change your entire month instantly in the middle of the afternoon. So kind of keep, if you're struggling, kind of keep that frame of mind. That next great trade is always there. You just have to keep doing your process. You have to keep working at it. You have to keep pushing it. You have to keep sitting there and just working and working. Not forcing trades, but you just have to sit there and be patient sometimes and look and work and stay focused. It'll be there, man. Trust me, it'll be there. As always, if you guys need some help, feel free to visit thelincolnlist.com and take that 14-day free trial. Every day I trade live in real time, just like this. You know, sometimes my voice gets annoying in the trade room, but we're talking stocks all day. I'm showing you all these trades live in real time, right on screen. None of that text typing stuff. You know, people, vaguely tell you that they're in or out of a stock, or vague entries. No, you see it all right on screen. No BS. It's right there for you, called in real time. Other than that, you guys enjoy your weekend and have a great last week of July. Talk to you soon.